The Mother Elf described the Demon King, a godlike entity currently bound by laws. Once fully descended, nothing could stop it. Roman realized why Kronos had abandoned pride for a truce with Dmitri. They anticipated the dimensional chaos. If Graxar was merely a subordinate, human forces alone couldn't prevail. Roman reflected that his own existence might serve as a counterbalance. In his previous world, he had been too powerful, unable to fully manifest heavenly realm arts. Demon realm foes could finally push him to his limits. When asked his stance, Roman said he made no promises, but would remove any obstacles in his path. The Mother Elf offered a gift, communion with the world tree for glimpses of past, present, and future. Though typically reserved for her alone, they made an exception for Arcadia's savior. Roman accepted, approaching the frozen, withered giant. Its skeletal branches loomed like a tombstone for the continent. Touching the bark triggered a golden aura, enveloping both him and the tree. Ice melted from its surface, steam rising as life returned, green buds emerging, bark smoothing. Teresa watched in awe. Roman's consciousness detached, becoming a weightless spirit of light. Roman found himself in Kronos' founding emperor's hidden chamber. Hooded figures knelt before Alexander, reporting unrest. Duke Vito and others, resentful of Valhalla's corruption, were rallying nobles. Civil war loomed if suppressed by force. Alexander smiled darkly, dismissing Roman Dmitri as insignificant. He ordered preparations. The moment Valhalla fell into chaos, their opportunity would arrive. Roman understood Alexander's silence. They waited like scavengers for the perfect strike. The scene shifted to Queen Isabel, severely wounded, slumped against a tree. A soldier urged her to flee to Luna, as Kronos had discovered their plans. She refused, citing her prophesied destiny. Having sent her followers to death, she couldn't abandon them. Rising despite her injuries, she ordered Knight Commander Leo to return to Luna. It was a queen's command. As she vanished into the darkness, Roman's consciousness returned. He connected the visions. Valhalla, demons, Alexander, Isabel, all pieces of encroaching darkness. Following Isabel would reveal the full truth. Elves knelt before Roman, pledging their race's loyalty. Flashback to the golden resonance. The Mother Elf recognized his power as flames of the fire demon, now bringing life. The world tree regenerated before their eyes, their centuries-old wish fulfilled. Tears flowed as Teresa declared Roman the prophesied savior, ordering all to follow him. Jero and Caden arrived from the forest edge. Jero bowed deeply, grateful for Luna's salvation, offering his service. Roman asked Caden about their contract terms. Caden confirmed Luna's loyalty to Dmitri in exchange for aid. Roman noted Dmitri had fulfilled its end by eliminating the orcs. Turning to the elves, he rejected uncompensated loyalty. The Mother Elf replied that the world tree's revival through his power was reward enough. Arcadia now had hope. Roman accepted. In return for their service, Dmitri would protect both elves and Luna. He stood as undisputed guardian of the continent, having seen its threats and secured its key allies. As Roman Dmitri navigates alliances and hidden agendas, visitors from Valhalla arrive with divided loyalties. What game is the Emperor playing? Arcadia's top priority became self-sufficiency through collective strength. Elves would focus on farming and cultivation across the region. Humans and other races divided remaining labor among themselves. Using the World Tree's power, they established a war gate linking Dmitri to the Salamander continent, creating a secure trade route. Without developing independent survival capabilities, Arcadia's downfall was inevitable. The meeting concluded, and elders from various races returned to Dmitri Castle in Goddess Mountains. Someone presented a report. Odelia's condition worsened daily. With the royal family vanished, conflicts erupted everywhere. Southern Kronos states, Umberto, Redford and Fronter, insisted on direct talks regarding the crisis. Roman Dmitri asked about the investigation he had ordered. Results showed Queen Isabel's last trace in the Kingdom of Winter. She reorganized her forces there before disappearing again, destination unknown. Roman inquired about Conuel and Commander Jonathan next. Two guests from Valhalla had arrived, Sanchez and Count Bragan. Sanchez, disciple of Sanchez Morales, led key rebel forces. Count Bragan appeared loyal to Valhalla's emperor. Amid these complications, the meeting ended for now. Count Bragan contemplated his mission: pressure Roman Dmitri to prevent him from joining Duke Victor, no matter the method. This task proved difficult, as Roman operated in a world of power where persuasion rarely worked easily. A servant informed Bragan that Lord Roman was occupied and unavailable. Bragan wondered if Roman had met Sanchez first, given rumours of Valhalla's 3 visitor factions as dangerous rebel influences. Later, Sanchez met Roman. He sought aid against Valhalla's emperor. Roman explained the empire's split. The emperor's faction versus rebels aiming to restore Valhalla's foundational principles of nature. The emperor's strongest warriors and army remained blindly loyal. Sanchez pressed for direct support to advance Valhalla. Roman refused outright involvement, as it would undermine the rebels' legitimacy. He questioned why rebels needed him if they truly had popular backing. True removal of the emperor required Valhalla's own strength. Roman offered indirect aid under conditions, a temporary alliance until Kronos fell, ensuring Valhalla stayed out of his path. That evening, Count Bragan requested another meeting, but Dmitri Castle replied that the young lord remained busy with private matters. Wait in the guest room. Days passed. Bragan's patience wore thin by the 3rd morning. He summoned Billy, ordering a meeting date by any means, even involving the Empire directly. Billy arrived at Dmitri Castle, meeting Hans, Roman's trusted aide. He demanded Count Bragan couldn't wait longer. A date would let them leave immediately. Hans calmly stated the young lord allowed no visitors until his private work finished. Billy lost his temper, insisting the request be forwarded. Hans refused, deeming forced meetings inappropriate. Billy moved to grab him, but a cold voice stopped him. "Lower your hand." Billy turned to see Kevin, Dmitri's most fearsome warrior and team member. Kevin approached slowly, voice icy. "What do you think you are?" threatening Hans on Dmitri soil. This moment revealed to Valhalla's envoys the depth of Roman Dmitri's power. Not just his army, but his people. Loyalty ran through every layer, making intrusion impossible. Kevin confronts a Valhalla knight who crossed a line in Dmitri territory, unleashing a lesson in loyalty that echoes Roman's past ruthlessness. Count Bragan's patience frays as delays mount, leading to a tense meeting where power dynamics shift irreversibly. One man's insult becomes an empire's warning. Kevin positioned himself firmly in the room, his gaze locked on Billy with unyielding focus. He questioned Billy's audacity in threatening Hans within Dmitri walls. Billy shifted uncomfortably, dismissing the reaction as overblown and attempting to deflect. Kevin held his ground, his voice steady as a thickening red aura pulsed around him. Billy snapped back, declaring himself a Valhalla knight unbound by local rules, viewing Hans as insignificant. The room went silent. Kevin struck, a sharp slap that snapped Billy's head aside. Billy froze in shock, hand rising to his cheek. Kevin followed with more blows, each precise and unrelenting. To Kevin, Hans wasn't a servant. He was family who had supported Kevin's kin in their darkest times. Insulting him crossed an unforgivable boundary. Billy collapsed to his knees, bloodied and dazed, muttering his Valhalla status in disbelief. A private soldier from a duchy had overpowered him effortlessly. Kevin loomed above, red aura flickering like restrained flame, offering a story rooted in Roman's teachings from a Barco family event, where insults to Dmitri met swift, brutal ends. Kevin recalled Roman's advice: learn to judge true worth. Billy fit the profile perfectly. With a grim smile, Kevin resumed, leaving Billy broken amid blood spray. Later, bandaged and slumped, Billy faced Count Bragan, whose rage simmered beneath the surface. Bragan saw the incident as Roman's deliberate provocation to provoke Valhalla emotionally. He resolved to endure, plotting revenge through patience until facing Roman directly. Meanwhile, Roman ended a magical communication with southern Kronos kings, Umberto, Redford, Fronter, agreeing to joint action on Odilia's refugee crisis. Hans entered. Roman stated it was time to meet Count Bragan, a subtle smile indicating full control of the timing. They sat across, tension thick. Bragan commented on the week's delay casually, though anger showed. Roman sipped tea, admitting busyness and suggesting advance notice for future visits. Bragan shifted to Billy's incident, demanding accountability for dishonouring a Valhalla knight. Roman countered that Billy struck first. Bragan insisted on status difference between servant and knight. Roman revealed Hans had been offered nobility for loyal service, but chose to stay as butler, family equivalent in Dmitri house. Bragan pressed that relations with Valhalla demanded consideration. Roman's eyes sharpened. Why should they refrain from touching Valhalla people? Bragan fell silent, sweat forming. Roman dismantled his delusions, recounting Valhalla's festival assassination attempt and follow-up schemes via Kronos. Roman's demeanour grew colder, dark purple aura filling the room with crushing pressure. He challenged Bragan, convince him why execution shouldn't happen here. Bragan appealed to pragmatism. Past enemies needn't be future ones, offering non-interference in Valhalla's civil war, even aid against Kronos. Roman rejected the empty promises. With Kevin's shadow looming, Bragan's pride crumbled to survival instinct. Roman saw no value in letting him live. Far away, Marquis Vella's office bustled until a soldier delivered a wooden box from Count Bragan. Vella smiled, expecting success against Roman. Confidence faded as he opened it. Inside, amid dried bloodstains, lay Bragan's severed head. Silence gripped the room. Vela screamed Roman Dmitri's name in panic. The message was clear: no interest in games from those who sought his destruction. Marquis Belfort entered Valhalla's grand hall carrying a wooden box. He presented it to the Emperor, explaining Roman Dmitri's message. Count Bragan was dead. Roman hadn't just rejected their terms, he'd severed the Count's head and returned it. The Emperor showed no surprise, resting his chin on his hand with detached indifference. The court erupted in outrage. One official demanded immediate military action, crush Duke Vieto's rebels first, then ally with Kronos against Dmitri. Count Gomez of the Conservative Party intervened. He noted Roman's meeting with Sanchez proved his rebel support. Gomez proposed a psychological approach, exploiting Valhalla's pure blood ideology and warrior pride. Public sentiment would turn against rebels if Roman, an outsider, dominated their liberation. Gomez requested permission to contact Roman directly, baiting him into recorded proof of interference that could sway public opinion. Marquis Belfort supported the plan. The Emperor dismissed them with a wave, leaving Gomez with a predatory smile. In a darkened chamber, Gomez activated a communication crystal. Roman's holographic image appeared. Gomez referenced the gift, questioning if brutality defined Dmitri ways, and warning their relationship was irreparably broken. Roman called his words amusing, reminding Gomez that Valhalla attempted assassination first. Compromise was never possible. Gomez acknowledged Roman's rise from Cairo, but warned against overstepping. Gomez activated a hidden recorder, mocking Roman's rebel support as insufficient against Valhalla. Roman countered. What did Duke Vieto's actions have to do with him? He'd already stated his position clearly. Roman dismissed Valhalla's civil war as unimportant. The real issue was their arrogance. Gomez realized the recording captured Roman's personal contempt, not political alliance, useless for propaganda. Roman presented one path to restoration. The Valhalla Emperor must personally visit and seek forgiveness. An official screamed in outrage at the demand. Roman ignored the outburst. Dmitri now officially recognized Valhalla as a hostile state. The crystal went dark. Marquis Belfort acknowledged they'd fallen into Roman's trap. His cunning exceeded simple schemes. Belfort studied the strategic map. Kingdom of Hector between them would grant Roman passage to Valhalla's northern border. He ordered immediate northern military deployment to avoid a pincer attack with internal rebels. A messenger delivered catastrophic news. Duke Vieto's rebels assaulted Hernan City. The fortified walls lay in ruins as rebels poured through breaches. Duke Vietto led personally, axe-cleaving imperial guards effortlessly. Amid burning streets, Vietto addressed soldiers and citizens. He offered surrender terms, promising to restore Valhalla's true warrior glory, tarnished by the current regime. At rebel suppression headquarters, Count Gomez stared at tactical maps, reeling from Hernan's rapid fall. He ordered mobilization of Valhalla's top warriors, except Caesar by the Emperor, to crush the rebellion decisively. He identified Buleras as Vietto's main threat. Concentrating elite forces offered quickest victory. A night burst in. Top warriors couldn't mobilize. They'd been summoned to a decisive battle. Gomez paled. Valhalla's sacred tradition bound top warriors to death matches, superseding military orders even during war. He demanded who initiated it. The knight revealed Ars, third-ranked, challenged Alvarez, second-ranked, to battle. Gomez stared blankly. Valhalla's two greatest assets would fight each other to the death, removed from battlefields precisely when Roman's war declaration activated. Perfect chaos at the worst moment. An imperial summon was issued, and the strongest fighters of Valhalla gathered in the capital. But this meeting didn't feel normal at all. There was tension in the air, and everyone knew the reason behind it. Roman Dmitri, Alvarez, the rank 2 fighter of Valhalla, looked around in frustration. To him, this wasn't the same Valhalla anymore. One by one, their strongest warriors had fallen. Morales was gone, then Barbossa, and even Roderick couldn't survive. And on top of that, Ares, who was rank 3, had chosen to follow Roman Dmitri and left Valhalla behind. For them, this situation was completely unacceptable. Just then, the doors slowly opened, and Ares himself walked in. He looked completely calm, as if nothing had changed. He casually greeted everyone, which only made the situation more tense. Alvarez immediately got irritated. He couldn't understand how someone they considered a traitor could walk in here with so much confidence. But Ares didn't see himself as a traitor. As far as he was concerned, he was still rank 3 of Valhalla, and without wasting any time, he directly challenged Alvarez to a deciding duel. The entire room went silent. A deciding duel wasn't just a normal fight. It was a sacred tradition among the top-ranked fighters. Some of the members tried to interfere, especially those ranked below Ares, but he made it very clear that no one below his rank had the right to step in. This wasn't something they could interrupt. After a brief moment of silence, Alvarez accepted the challenge. The scene then shifted to the Valhalla Temple, where the duel was about to begin. As both fighters stood facing each other, Alvarez spoke confidently. He reminded Ares that history always repeats itself and that Ares had already lost to him multiple times before. But instead of reacting, Ares simply smiled, as if none of that mattered anymore. The duel finally began, and in the very next moment both of them rushed forward. Their swords clashed again and again, creating powerful shockwaves. The intensity of their exchange left the spectators stunned. Even though Ares was holding his ground, most of them still believed that Alvarez had the upper hand. Alvarez admitted that Ares had improved a lot, and his swordsmanship was impressive. But according to him, the difference in their aura was something that could never be overcome. To prove his point, he launched a powerful attack. For a moment it looked like his sword had pierced through Ares, but it turned out to be just an afterimage. Ares had already moved. Seeing this, Alvarez realized that he could no longer hold back. He decided to end the fight with one final attack. His aura suddenly exploded, filling the entire area with overwhelming pressure. The spectators were forced to step back because of the sheer intensity. Then, Alvarez used his secret technique, explosion smash. The attack landed perfectly, and for a moment, he was sure that he had won. But the next second, something unexpected happened. From within the smoke, Ares walked out, completely unharmed. Before anyone could even react, Ares counterattacked instantly. His strike was fast and precise, and it was fatal. Alvarez's swords fell to the ground, and in the very next moment, even his arm was severed. Blood spread across the battlefield, and shock filled the faces of everyone watching. That's when the truth was revealed. Ares had reached an entirely new level. He had become a 6-star swordsman. From the very beginning of the fight, he had been holding back his true power. What followed was pure domination. Ares continued attacking without giving Alvarez any chance to recover. The spectators couldn't believe what they were seeing. The man they thought would win was completely overwhelmed. At the same time, one of the observers finally understood what was really going on. This wasn't just a random fight. This was part of Roman Dmitri's plan. He had already sent his forces to the northern front to separate the Emperor's army, and now he had used Ares to eliminate Alvarez. Everything had been calculated from the start. Realizing this, panic began to spread among them. They understood that if this continued, they would keep getting controlled by Roman's strategies. Left with no other option, they decided to abandon their own principles and take immediate action. An order was given to arrest Ares right then and there, but surprisingly, no one moved. Because deep down, everyone already knew things were no longer under their control, and with that, the balance of power had completely shifted, and this was only the beginning. Before the journey even begins, we hear the words of a man who already understood how dangerous this place had become. A loyal retainer recalls what his lord told him right before leaving for Valhalla, and those words don't sound like motivation. They sound like a warning. He says Valhalla has completely lost a warrior's pride. Think about that. A land built on strength, discipline, and respect for combat has now turned into something far darker. And then comes the most chilling part. He warns that even if someone wins a duel, even if they prove their strength fairly, there's still a chance they'll be attacked afterward. That's how broken the system is. Winning doesn't guarantee safety anymore. In fact, it might make you a target. And with that, the story sets a tense and uneasy tone, like something terrible is waiting just around the corner. And then suddenly everything explodes, not with battle, but with news. Ares has won. The duel of decision is over, and the result spreads across Valhalla faster than anyone could have imagined. This isn't just some quiet announcement either. It's broadcast using a magical communication device, meaning everyone sees it, everyone hears it, and no one can ignore it. Ares, a name that many didn't take seriously before, has now climbed to the position of the second strongest in all of Valhalla. That's not just impressive. That's terrifying. The reactions are immediate and intense. Some people are in complete shock. How did someone so young reach this level? Others are angry, especially those who feel their own positions are now threatened. You can almost feel the jealousy and fear mixing together. But at the same time, there are those who feel something different, pride. To them, Ares represents something rare. Proof that raw talent and determination can still break through even in a corrupt system. But Ares doesn't stop to enjoy his victory. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't hesitate. Instead, he does something that instantly shakes the entire power structure of Valhalla. He issues a challenge, not to just anyone, but to the very top. Caesar, the #1 ranked warrior, the man known as Valhalla's strongest swordsman, a figure whose reputation alone is enough to silence a room. And now Ares is standing there, openly declaring that he wants to fight him. This isn't just bold, it's explosive. And just like that, the entire political landscape is thrown into chaos. Nobles, officials, and warriors begin arguing, debating, analysing every possible outcome. Some insist that Caesar's experience and reputation make him unbeatable. Others aren't so sure anymore. Because Ares isn't just some lucky challenger. He has already reached the 6-star aura realm. That level of power isn't normal. It's the kind of strength that can change the outcome of a battle, no matter who stands on the other side. And suddenly, the impossible doesn't seem so impossible anymore. But just as tensions reach their peak, the story takes a sharp turn. Because while Valhalla is busy arguing about duels and rankings, war has already begun. An urgent report arrives like a thunderclap. Dmitri has launched an attack on the northern front line, and far earlier than anyone expected. There's no time to prepare, no time to debate. The enemy is already moving. And this isn't a small force. An army of 100,000 soldiers is advancing toward Valhalla's most important defensive position. 100,000. Just imagining that number is enough to understand the scale of what's coming. This isn't pressure, this is overwhelming force. But the real danger isn't just the number of troops, it's who's leading them. Among the attackers are elite mages, flare mages and phoenix mages, specialists in destruction. Their strategy is brutally efficient. First, they unleash long-range magical bombardment to weaken the fortress. Then, once the defences start to crumble, the main force moves in for close combat. It's a perfect combination of range and power, and then comes the moment that makes everything worse. Felix steps forward, a master of the Phoenix Magic Tower, and with absolute confidence he declares that bringing down Valhalla's walls will take just 1 hour. 1 hour, not a day, not a prolonged siege, just 1 hour to destroy defences that were meant to protect against massive invasions. The defenders hear this, and for the first time real urgency sets in. This isn't a battle they can casually hold, they're already on the clock. Still, Valhalla doesn't stand defenceless. The Mountain Magic Tower takes charge of the defence. Their specialty is protection, reinforcement and endurance. Their master, Uir, leads a group of 100 mages, all focused on one mission: hold the line, block incoming attacks, strengthen the fortress. By as much time as possible, they estimate they can hold out for about 10 days. 10 days until the enemy can fully take control of key territory like Hernard. 10 days sounds like a plan. But plans don't always survive contact with reality. The attack begins. The sky erupts as waves of magical energy crash down onto the fortress. Explosions shake the ground. The defenders immediately activate their strongest protection, the stone shield, a massive magical barrier designed to absorb and resist even the most powerful attacks. At first, it works. The shield holds. For a moment it feels like maybe, just maybe, they can survive this. But then, the attackers reveal something that changes everything. Dispel. A counter-magic designed to erase other magic completely, and its strength depends on one thing: the power difference between the caster and the target, and that's where the defenders realize they're in trouble. The enemy's dispel is faster, stronger, more precise. 50 mages working together with perfect coordination, tearing down magical defences piece by piece. The defenders try to fight back. They even have more mages, 100 of them, but numbers don't matter when the enemy is simply better. Their dispels are too slow, their reactions too late, and then it happens, the moment that changes everything. The stone shield is destroyed, gone, just like that. A defence that was supposed to protect them from total destruction collapses under pressure, and with it, the confidence of the defenders shatters. Panic spreads, orders are shouted in desperation, emergency weapons are prepared, a flame cannon is brought forward. There's even talk of launching a wide-area multi-dispel to try and regain control. But deep down, everyone already knows the truth. They're losing, and what makes it even more terrifying is how fast it's happening. The attackers didn't just break through, they overwhelmed the defences in record time. And in the middle of all this chaos, one name stands out. Edwin, a young mage whose growth is described as abnormal, rapid, unnatural. His progress suggests something even more dangerous, that the enemy isn't just strong, they're evolving at a speed no one can match. And that realization hits harder than any attack, because it means this gap will only get worse. Though once known for leadership, he now stood among the Allied forces as a pure mage, fully committed to his role. While Felix prepared overwhelming offensive spells, Edwin focused on dismantling the enemy's foundation, relentlessly casting Dispel to break Valhalla's magical formations. His mental strength expanded outward, directly interfering with the opposing mages. Instead of clashing head-on with destructive power, Edwin targeted their ability to even cast spells. Following his lead, the Phoenix mages synchronized their actions, repeatedly using Dispel to suppress Valhalla's magic before it could take shape. This strategy reflected Roman Dmitri's long-term vision. He had invested heavily in magical development, understanding that future wars would not be decided by brute force alone. Against fortified nations like Valhalla, magic would become the decisive weapon. Through constant refinement, Dmitri's forces had elevated their mages to a level far beyond ordinary limits. As a result, even though Valhalla's wizards outnumbered them, they struggled to keep up. The difference in skill was undeniable. Among them, Edwin Hector stood out the most. His control was overwhelming, breaking defensive spells in moments and forcing multiple enemy mages to focus on him alone, yet still failing to contain him. Despite coming from a nation not known for magic, Edwin's talent had grown to a level that even the highest authorities of magical knowledge had once desired. Each time he shattered the enemy's defences, Felix and the other mages followed instantly with destructive spells. Their coordination was flawless. Dispel, then destruction. Flames erupted across the battlefield. Explosions echoed one after another, and the once stable magical defences of Valhalla began to weaken. Smoke rose from the castle walls as the strain became visible. Inside, Hœnir urgently commanded repairs, trying to stabilize the collapsing defences. He had been confident that the walls would hold without fail, but in less than an hour, that certainty was shattered. Valhalla's mages desperately poured their energy into maintaining the barrier, working together to restore what had been broken. Yet under Edwin's leadership, the relentless pressure continued. Piece by piece, their defences were worn down. Then, finally, the wall collapsed. The impact shook the battlefield as the fortified barrier gave way, just as Felix had predicted. The path forward was now open. At that moment, the command rang out. Advance. The Allied army surged forward without hesitation, charging through the breach with overwhelming momentum. The battle had reached a turning point. Now, it was Roman Dmitri's move. Elsewhere, Count Gomez pushed forward with growing urgency. News of the northern front being attacked had unsettled him. Roman Dmitri's actions were far bolder than expected. Even with a massive force and the support of Valhalla's elite mages, Gomes believed the defence should have lasted at least 15 days. To him, the real deciding factor lay elsewhere, the outcome of the clash between Ares and Caesar. If Ares were to win, the situation would spiral beyond control. Still, Gomes held on to one assumption. With the Marquis of Killian and the mountain's mages guarding Valhalla, its fall should not come easily. He had not yet realised. The collapse had already begun. At the Temple of Valhalla, Ares stood still, waiting. He had already issued his challenge to Caesar, and now, under the watchful eyes of countless spectators, he remained calm and unmoving. The area was overflowing with people. What began as a staged gathering had turned into a massive crowd as rumours spread, drawing in citizens from all sides. Voices filled the air. Most believed Caesar would win without question. Others hesitated, recalling how Ares had already defeated Alvarez, something no one had expected. The uncertainty only fueled the tension. Through the dense crowd, Count Gomez made his way forward and took his reserved seat. His expression remained controlled, but his thoughts were restless. For Valhalla, this fight could not end in defeat. It wasn't just about Ares winning or losing. If Ares, who once failed to surpass Alvarez, had now risen to challenge the very peak after joining Roman Dmitri, then the meaning was clear. The credit would not belong to Ares alone. It would prove that Roman Dmitri had elevated him to an entirely new level, and that truth was difficult to ignore. Roman had already reshaped the very foundation of swordsmanship, surpassing even legends of the past. If Ares succeeded here, it would only strengthen that narrative. Then the moment arrived. The crowd split apart. Caesar appeared. Every step he took drew complete attention. Unlike the rough and imposing warriors of Valhalla, his presence was composed, almost refined. His appearance was clean and orderly, closer to that of a noble than a battlefield fighter. Only the massive claymore resting on his shoulder revealed his true nature. The weapon looked heavy and unforgiving, something no ordinary person could even lift, let alone wield with ease. He stopped in front of Ares. A faint smile formed on his face. He spoke as if recalling an old memory. 10 years ago, their paths had crossed. At the time, Ares was already a promising warrior, and for a brief moment he had the chance to learn from Caesar, the strongest swordsman in Valhalla. It had not been a formal bond of master and disciple, but Ares had respected him deeply and listened to his guidance. That short encounter had made one thing clear. The gap between them was overwhelming, and in Caesar's eyes that gap still remained. He spoke with confidence, even regret, suggesting that Ares had wasted his potential by not fully following him back then. To Caesar, comparisons between himself and Alvarez were meaningless. Those who made such judgments simply didn't understand the true difference in power. With a single motion, he loosened the strap of his claymore and took it in one hand, as if its weight meant nothing. The atmosphere shifted instantly. A quiet pressure spread across the area. Caesar gave Ares one last chance to kneel, admit his mistake, and swear loyalty to Valhalla's emperor. If he did, Caesar was willing to spare him for the sake of the empire's future. But the moment the sword was drawn, the answer was already clear. Ares smiled. He acknowledged the past without hesitation. Yes, he had once learned from Caesar. Yes, he had always sought growth, no matter who the teacher was. That had never changed. But neither had his resolve. As he raised his own sword, the air between them sharpened. There was no intention of stepping back. Ares' smile slowly deepened as he faced Caesar. He spoke calmly, but his words carried weight. The time he had spent learning under Caesar had been short, only a few days. For Ares, that was always enough. Whenever he felt he had learned all he could from someone, he moved on without hesitation, and Caesar was no exception. People called him the greatest swordsman of Valhalla, yet Ares had never stayed long enough to be shaped by him. To Ares, growth didn't come from clinging to one master, it came from constantly moving forward. Then his tone shifted slightly. What truly amused him wasn't the past, but the present. Even after all this time, Caesar had remained within Valhalla. Meanwhile, Ares had left and found something far greater in Roman Dmitri. After returning from Arcadia, Ares had only a week to prepare for the coming conflict. It was an impossible task. He was expected to face both Alvarez and Caesar, the two strongest pillars of Valhalla. He intended to carry out the mission alone. But before that, Roman Dmitri called him to the training ground. What stood out immediately was the weapon in Roman's hands. It wasn't the sword he was known for. Instead, he held a pair of ordinary-looking blades. Yet Ares understood instantly. Those swords resembled Alvarez's style. Without wasting time, Roman told him to draw his weapon. From that moment, Roman himself would become his opponent. This wasn't reckless training. It was preparation. Roman knew that Ares's mission required overwhelming strength, not just skill. Instead of pushing him blindly into danger, he chose to refine Ares to the point where success was possible. For Ares, it was exactly what he had wanted, a chance to face Roman Dmitri at full strength. But the outcome was absolute. Again and again, Ares was thrown to the ground. Despite his reputation as a genius swordsman, despite countless battles that had shaped his instincts, he couldn't gain the upper hand even once. Each exchange only widened the gap. Roman's dual sword technique reached a level Ares had never imagined. Every movement was precise, every strike unavoidable. It wasn't just strength, it was control, experience, and something beyond both. At some point, Ares realized something unsettling. He couldn't even picture a way to win. It reminded him of the past, of when he first faced Caesar 10 years ago. Back then, the difference between them had been overwhelming as well. But even then, Ares believed it was a gap that could be closed with time. Caesar was strong, but not unreachable. Roman Dmitri was different. Facing him felt like standing before an endless wall. For the first time, Ares understood that surpassing someone might take not just years, but an entirely different level of existence. Then Roman changed his approach. He switched to a claymore. Even though Ares was already exhausted, he couldn't help but laugh at what came next. Roman said he would now raise the level further and fight him the way Caesar would. That day, Ares experienced something completely beyond his world. And standing now before the real Caesar, that experience had already changed everything. There was no need for further words. At Ares's calm but provocative remarks, Caesar's expression hardened. The brief trace of anger on his face said enough. This was no longer a conversation, it was a test of strength. The priest of Valhalla stepped forward and declared the start of the duel. In the next instant, Caesar moved first. His aura erupted violently as he closed the distance in a single burst, embodying the overwhelming, relentless style he was known for. There was no hesitation in his approach, only pressure, meant to crush his opponent before they could react. But as Ares faced that charge, his mind recalled something else. Roman Dmitri's training. Caesar's strength was built on dominance, constant attacks, leaving no room to breathe. And the answer to that kind of opponent had already been shown to him. Meet force with certainty. The first clash shook the ground. Steel collided with a deafening impact, and from that moment on, Caesar didn't stop. His attacks came one after another, each heavier than the last, each carrying enough force to overwhelm an ordinary warrior instantly. Explosions of aura filled the air. Unlike his fight with Alvarez, Ares unleashed his full power from the beginning. His 6-star aura surged outward, matching Caesar's intensity. Even so, the sheer weight behind Caesar's strikes couldn't be ignored. Every blow rattled his body. And yet, there was no fear. Compared to what he had faced during training, this pressure felt manageable. Caesar was fast. His attacks were powerful, but they were still slower and lighter than what Ares had endured against Roman Dmitri. That difference changed everything. Ares remained calm, reading each movement, blocking with precision. Then, in a brief opening between attacks, he struck back. A single counter. Caesar barely avoided it, but the moment alone was enough to shake him. For the first time, his expression twisted, not from effort, but from wounded pride. He attacked again, even more aggressively. To the spectators, it was overwhelming. Even the rankers of Valhalla, watching the duel, knew they wouldn't last long under such pressure. Caesar's relentless style left no space, no escape, but Ares endured. He was pushed back, his body shaken, blood rising to his throat, but he didn't break. Instead, he smiled. Caesar stood at the peak of Valhalla. His strength was undeniable, but beyond that peak, Ares had already seen something greater. Roman Dmitri. Compared to that overwhelming presence, Caesar's attacks no longer felt absolute. They were powerful, but not unreachable. That realization became Ares' confidence. Enraged, Caesar gathered his mana all at once. The air around him twisted as black and red energy surged violently, wrapping around his blade like a storm. This was no longer a test. It was a killing strike. The ground trembled as the power condensed, lightning-like energy tearing through the surroundings. Die! The attack came down with devastating force, and in that moment Ares looked up calmly. His mind didn't waver. Instead, it returned to the path he had chosen, the teachings he had received. He raised his mana, guided by the Sura method, and for an instant he remembered the ideal that stood far above everything, the heavenly demon sword, a power he could not yet replicate, but one that showed him exactly where to go next. The instant his sword swings forward, a sudden realization reaches him. Without hesitation, he draws upon the heavenly demon sword art and forces a blazing green aura around his blade. Power surges across the steel, expanding into a massive energy edge that illuminates the dark arena walls. Ares had always been praised as a gifted swordsman, but even he had never imagined releasing strength on this level. It is only an imitation of the true technique, a mere shadow of the original art, yet the pressure alone is overwhelming. He gathers everything into one strike. The giant blade of energy crashes downward with enough force to shake the Colosseum. Caesar, caught completely off guard, can only stare as the attack descends. Even though it carries only a fraction of the heavenly demon's real power, it is still more than enough to break through him entirely. The impact explodes across the battlefield. Caesar's defense shatters at once, fragments scattering through the air as he is overwhelmed in a single blow. Silence follows the destruction. Ares looks at what he has done and understands the gap clearly. This is not the true sword art, only a rough imitation, but instead of disappointment, he feels excitement. If this incomplete version carries such force, then his own growth has only just begun. Above the arena, a hooded announcer struggles to steady his voice as he reveals the result. Ares has defeated Caesar. With that victory, he rises to first place in the Valhalla rankings. The crowd erupts. Thunderous cheers fill the Colosseum, and through the blue light of the live broadcast, the entire kingdom witnesses the fall of one ruler and the rise of another. Far away, the king of Valhalla watches in silence. The blonde monarch clenches his jaw, unable to hide his anger. Disgust crosses his face as he turns away from the screen before the celebration can continue. His cloak snaps behind him as he leaves the throne room, each step echoing through the corridor. Back in the arena, Ares stands beneath the roar of the crowd, but he shows no interest in their praise. His face hardens. He raises his damaged sword high and calls for everyone's attention. His voice spreads through the Colosseum and across the live transmission. From this moment onward, he declares that he will step down as a Valhalla ranker. The cheers die instantly. Shock replaces celebration. The arena falls into confusion as thousands struggle to understand why the newly crowned #1 would abandon the highest position the same day he earned it. Ares gives them no time to recover. He reminds the Empire that 10 years earlier, Caesar had stood at the summit without equal. Back then, no swordsman in Valhalla could challenge him. But the truth is simple. Since then, Caesar has not advanced at all. The man who once chased greater mastery was slowly consumed by comfort. Authority, political influence, and wealth replaced the hunger that once made him strong. Ares' words strike harder than any blade. He declares that the moment a warrior begins depending on borrowed power, pride starts to disappear. And when pride is lost, the sword follows the same path. Like steel abandoned to rust in the dirt, it eventually breaks apart and becomes worthless. Then his tone lowers. He says Caesar's growth ended the day he abandoned that pride. And because the strongest man in Valhalla stopped moving forward, the nation itself remained frozen beside him. Ares lifts his head again, calm but unshaken. He tells the people they are free to call him a traitor for abandoning the rank he just earned. It does not matter. Pressing a fist against his chest, he speaks the only identity he will ever accept. He was born a warrior, and he will die as one. With complete conviction, Ares admits that only now, standing beside Roman Dmitri, does he feel truly alive again. Having said everything he came to say, he turns his back on the arena. The title, the applause, and the highest seat in Valhalla mean nothing to him now. But before leaving, he gives the Empire one final command: never forget your roots. He reminds every citizen that the blood of warriors still runs through them, whether they acknowledge it or not. His enormous projected image still hovers above the capital, and his voice echoes through the streets. People stop where they stand, staring upward in silence as his message spreads across the city. Many cannot answer the question rising in their minds. When had Valhalla changed? For generations, the kingdom had taken pride in being a nation of fighters. Strength, courage, and discipline were once its foundation. Yet Ares' departure forces everyone to face what they have become. Even the ranking system they honor so highly was built from that same warrior spirit. But Caesar, the symbol of Valhalla itself, has fallen in humiliation before the eyes of the world. Whispers spread quickly through the crowd. Lucas of the House faction speaks what many already know. If Ares had not chosen loyalty to the enemy of the imperial family, he would have been praised as Valhalla's greatest pride. Instead, a warrior of unmatched talent has rejected the nation entirely. To Lucas, the meaning is obvious. The moment Ares returned, defeated Caesar, and walked away, he proved that his decision to follow Roman Dmitri was the correct one. That realization passes through the streets like a wave. Citizens quietly admit that ever since Ares chose Dmitri's side, Valhalla itself has stopped growing. Then, as uneasy murmurs fill the city, a firm set of footsteps strikes the stone road and silences the noise at once. Lucas steps forward and faces the restless crowd. His voice carries open contempt as he forces their hidden frustration into the open. He asks whether this is truly the Valhalla they are proud of now, a nation where useless men who can barely handle a sword walk with authority as if they own the empire. His words break the last barrier holding the people back. A man from the crowd shouts in response and places the blame directly on the throne. He condemns the foolish 14th prince, saying an ignorant ruler has no right to command the nation simply because stronger figures protect him. The mood in the streets changes at once. Shock and confusion are replaced by anger. Faces harden, jaws tighten, and years of suppressed resentment finally surface. What had once been whispered in private is now spoken aloud without fear. Then those emotions find direction. With Duke Vito already leading resistance against the corrupt royal family, and with Dmitri openly supporting that cause, the citizens begin to believe rebellion is no longer impossible. The fire spreads quickly. People decide they can no longer stand by while Valhalla decays from within. One man raises his voice above the rest and calls for action. If Duke Vito has made his stand, then it is time for the people to risk their own lives for Valhalla as well. Ares's defiance becomes the spark. His victory, his rejection of the ranking system, and his loyalty to Dmitri ignite the hearts of the people and turn growing resentment into open rebellion. Far from the streets, the atmosphere inside Valhalla's command center is far colder. Senior commanders stand over a large war map, studying the sudden collapse of stability across the empire. One strategist admits that he had long expected Roman Dmitri to become a major threat. Now, he says, the situation has passed the point of political conflict. This is war. He warns that whichever side loses its resolve first will be destroyed entirely. Count Gaiman anxiously asks if that means they will have to abandon the northern front. The strategist corrects him at once. They will not give it up completely, only sacrifice part of it. He explains that Dmitri's plan is clear. Ares has been used as a decisive weapon to occupy Valhalla's highest-ranked warriors. While the Empire's strongest fighters are distracted, Dmitri can pressure the north and prevent the army from fully suppressing the rebellion inside the kingdom. Even while recognizing the strategy, the commander remains arrogant. He argues that the Allied forces under Dmitri number only around 100,000 soldiers, far too few to topple the Valhalla Empire. Marquis Belfair dismisses the northern offensive as a diversion. In his view, Dmitri's true objective is to secretly strengthen the rebellion in Hernand. But Count Gaiman does not look convinced. His unease only deepens. Under growing pressure, he asks the question no one wants to hear. What if Roman Dmitri breaks through the northern defences completely and pushes deeper into Valhalla? A cold smile forms on Marquis Belfair's face. He calmly explains that even if the north collapses, Valhalla still has options. They only need to shift the political balance of the continent in their favour. Count Gaiman immediately understands. Because of the current truce, the Kronos Empire cannot openly join the war, but they can still move their forces toward the Cairo border and create enormous pressure through threat alone. If that happens, Dmitri will be forced to divide his attention. Relief replaces Gaiman's fear. He praises Belfair's thinking and calls it the perfect solution for Valhalla. But before their confidence can settle, the doors of the command center burst open. A messenger rushes inside with an urgent report from the northern front. His expression alone is enough to silence the room. He tells Belfair that the situation is too serious for words and that he needs to witness it himself. At the center of the chamber, the blue communication crystal activates. A live projection appears above it, but instead of an orderly battlefield report, the image shows a wounded northern commander barely able to stand. Covered in blood and shaking with fear, he forces out a final message. The north has already fallen to Roman. The moment he finishes speaking, his body collapses. Then a figure steps forward from the darkness behind him. Roman Dmitri enters the crystal's view. His presence alone changes the room. Calm, cold, and completely in control, he looks directly into Valhalla's command center through the projection. Roman says Marquis Belfair is a disappointment. He reminds them that Count Bragan's severed head was sent as both a warning and a message. Yet despite that, this weak resistance is all Valhalla had prepared. The faces of the strategists turn pale. Only now does the truth fully strike them. The northern line was not merely attacked. It has already been conquered. Roman remains composed as he delivers his next words with absolute certainty. He has no interest in prolonging the war. If they drag the Emperor of Valhalla before him and force him to kneel immediately, then he will end the conflict. The insult shatters Belfair's restraint. He explodes in rage and shouts back at the projection. Pointing at the crystal, he reveals what he believes is Valhalla's hidden advantage. Kronos' forces are already gathering at the Cairo border. Whatever Roman plans, he claims, will soon become meaningless. He swears to send troops at once, crush the Hernan rebels, and erase Dmitri from the continent entirely. Belfair continues shouting in fury. He declares that Roman will soon learn the fear of facing two great powers at once. When Kronos and Valhalla move together, he claims, no force on the continent will be able to resist them. Roman shows no reaction. He calmly steps over the broken armor and bodies scattered across the captured northern battlefield. His voice returns through the crystal as cold and steady as before. He says he has heard Valhalla's intentions clearly. Then a faint smile appears on his face, not from concern but amusement. To Roman, the threats coming from the command room mean nothing. Standing in the aftermath of total victory, he looks directly into the projection and mocks Belfair's confidence. He admits that even he had not expected Valhalla's northern defences to collapse so easily. Their carelessness, he says, has opened the road for him. Roman makes it clear that he will continue advancing without pause, cutting through every obstacle until the war is completely decided. He tells Belfair to keep that same arrogance until the very end. A heavy killing intent spreads around Roman's figure, so intense that even through the projection it sends fear into the command room. Belfair, moments earlier full of confidence, now stands drenched in sweat. Roman's expression sharpens into a grim smile. When everything is over, he promises, they will meet him face to face, and this time, no distance or strategy will protect them. The communication has been cut, the room is silent, and the reality of the situation is settling in like cold iron. Marquis Belfair and Count Gomez are not men who break easily, but right now neither of them is hiding it. They're rattled. Gomez lays it out plainly. 100,000 troops pushing toward Valhalla's capital should be impossible. By any conventional measure it is. But Roman Dmitri doesn't fight by conventional measures. The man carved his legend in the war with Kronos, capturing fortified positions that should never have fallen, leaving nothing behind but ash and reputation. Even if his force is small, Belfair and Gomez know the damage he would inflict before anyone could stop him would be catastrophic. Belfair reaches his decision. There's only one move left. He has to go directly to the Emperor. In the Valhalla Empire, there is one rule above all others. You do not seek an audience with the Emperor unless he calls for you. Those who have broken that rule in the past didn't get the chance to regret it. Belfair and Gomez know this. They walk into the Imperial Palace anyway. The throne room is vast and cold. The Emperor is somewhere in the distance, draped in indifference. But as the two commanders reach the steps of the throne and drop to their knees, something shifts. The weight of what they've just done crashes over both of them. Sweat soaks through their composure. Their bodies are trembling before a single word is spoken. The Emperor rises. He approaches slowly. His footsteps echo through the hall with quiet, deliberate menace. He speaks Belfair's name. What follows is not a trial, it's a statement. Before Belfair can even finish answering, the Emperor strikes him. A backhanded blow so forceful it snaps his head sideways and rings off the stone walls. Then a second strike, then a third, each one harder than the last, until Belfair is coughing blood on the floor of the imperial throne room. Count Gomez watches in silent horror, unable to move. Standing over the broken marquis, the Emperor doesn't rage. He's almost calm, and that makes it worse. He reminds them both why they were given power in the first place, so they wouldn't become a burden to him. And yet here they are, crawling into his presence with news of failure. Then he says something unexpected. He admits he has never truly liked anyone born in Valhalla. Their warrior pride, their ancient traditions, their talk of strength and honor. He calls it the noise of people who are too weak to face reality. What comes next is the chapter's most revealing moment. The Emperor confesses that when he looks at Roman Dmitri, he is reminded of something from his own past. A time when arrogant voices rejected him, the rightful heir, and tried to force him into submission under the weight of imperial tradition. He hated those people. But Roman Dmitri, a commoner from the Empire's outer rim who has built himself into Valhalla's most dangerous enemy, the Emperor doesn't hate him the same way. He almost respects it. He says Roman has grasped the true, ruthless nature of what Valhalla is, better than most people born inside it ever did. That dark amusement lasts for exactly a moment. Then the Emperor snaps. Another brutal flurry of strikes rains down on Belfir, and somewhere in the middle of it a new strategy takes shape in the Emperor's mind. His order is short and absolute. March on Hernard, leave no one alive. Belfir and Gomez, barely able to stand, shout their obedience and scramble to carry it out. The Emperor covers his face with one hand, smiling. He poses one final question to the empty room, to Roman Dmitri, wherever he is. What will your choice be? The next morning, Valhalla's war machine is already moving. One of the continent's most powerful armies marches straight for Hernard, and every step of it is reported directly back to Roman Dmitri. Inside his command tent, his second-in-command, Chris, raises the obvious concern. They know the Imperial army is coming. Is Roman certain he wants to continue? Roman doesn't hesitate. He explains it clearly. The moment he took Count Brigand's head, he stepped into a game with only two outcomes. There's no retreating from this. Without Dmitri's military pressure, the Hernard rebellion collapses. And if Hernard falls, Roman finds himself trapped between two massive empires simultaneously, Valhalla and Kronos, with no room to breathe. This war, he tells Chris, runs entirely on momentum. The side that stops first loses everything. He leans over the war map and points to three territories, Lunos, Port Bell and Santino. These three strongholds form the shortest path to Valhalla's capital, and beyond Santino sits something even more valuable, a major warp point that would give Dmitri instant strike capability anywhere within Valhalla's borders, including the capital itself. His timeline: capture all three within 1 week, and they become the most dangerous force Valhalla has ever had to face. Roman's expression doesn't waver. He's already issued his silent challenge to the Emperor. Now he waits to see if the Emperor truly understands what he's walking into. The scene shifts to Lunos. Viscount Lunos stands on his fortress walls, watching Roman's army arrive. He has direct orders from the Emperor. He doesn't need to win. He just needs to hold long enough to buy the capital a few extra days. But day one passes. No siege. Roman's army simply camps outside the gates. Soldiers queue for hot meals and rest in shifts. It's almost relaxed. By day two, Viscount Lunos is losing his composure. Why aren't they attacking? Is this even a siege? He tries to rationalize it. No army of 100,000 can realistically take an empire. There must be a limit to what Roman can do. Then a messenger arrives, gasping for breath. Port Bell is under attack, by Roman himself. Right now, Port Bell is located entirely behind Lunos's position. If Roman is personally leading an assault there, then what exactly is the army camped in front of the fortress walls? The realization hits like a physical blow. Lunos had been watching a decoy the entire time. 3 days earlier, inside the rebel camp, Duke Vieto received the news of the Northern Front's collapse and the deaths of Alvarez and Caesar. The losses are severe. But one of his commanders, Sanchez, a follower of Morales, isn't surprised. He had predicted Roman's return. He reminds the Duke that even when the Valhalla imperial family sent assassins after Roman, the man came back on his own terms, victorious. Duke Vieto refocuses on their role in all of this. The rebellion cannot topple Valhalla by force alone. What it can do is spread truth, show the people of Valhalla that change is possible, that the imperial family's grip is not unbreakable. Every day they hold out, the message gets louder. With Roman keeping the imperial army occupied, the emperor can't dedicate his full focus to crushing them. If the rebels can survive 15 more days, Vieto believes the people will rise, but the Emperor of Valhalla has already made his own calculation. Having abandoned the northern front entirely to Roman's advance, he redirects a staggering million-strong army, led by his personal elite force, the Royal Knights, directly to Hernard. The intent is total annihilation. Not a siege, not a negotiation. The complete and permanent end of the rebellion. A Hernard commander looks at the incoming force and can barely form the words, "How are they supposed to stop that?" The answer, for now, is that they can't. 2 generals, 2 colossal armies. And in the middle of it all, Roman Dmitri playing a game of war that nobody else has fully read yet. The Emperor thinks he's closing the trap. Roman thinks he's already sprung his. Which one of them is right? An ocean of silver and black armor stretches across the horizon, a seemingly endless column of imperial soldiers marching in perfect formation toward the fortress of Hernard. At the head of this procession, the Emperor's elite royal knights lead the advance, their golden banners snapping violently in the wind. Standing on the battlements, Duke Vito takes one long look at the approaching force and goes quiet. His veteran's eye does the cold math immediately. Their numbers easily push past several 100,000, and at the front, that golden standard confirms the worst. The Royal Knights have been fully mobilized. Beside him, Sanchez breaks into a cold sweat, confirming what the intelligence reports already warned. This is the Emperor's entire army. The picture sharpens quickly. The Emperor of Valhalla has not split his forces to deal with the threat on the northern front. Instead, he has committed everything, a force of over 1 million, to crush the rebellion at Hernard before Roman Dmitri can arrive and complicate the situation. Duke Vito understands the logic immediately. This isn't just a military campaign. This is a preemptive extermination. The Emperor wants the rebel army gone before any unpredictable variables enter the equation. He wants it over fast, and he wants it permanent. The Duke does not flinch outwardly, but the numbers are beyond argument. His own force of 200,000 has no realistic path to surviving a 1 million-strong imperial assault, let alone holding for the 15 days the rebels originally planned. The grim question forming in his mind isn't whether they can win, it's whether they can survive even a single week. The tense standoff shatters without warning. Massive fireballs arc into the sky from Hernard's siege weapons, leaving trails of scorching light as they crash into the fortress's magical barrier. The ground shakes. The air fills with heat and noise. Duke Vito steadies himself against the shockwaves, watching the defensive barrier absorb blow after blow, and wondering how long it can last. The answer comes quickly. The Emperor hasn't just sent soldiers and siege weapons. Emerging from the imperial ranks are the vagabond mages, dark-robed practitioners from one of Valhalla's most feared magic towers. Duke Vito can barely believe the Emperor would deploy them here, but there they are. The vagabond mages raise their hands in unison and release a combined assault spell, a catastrophic mixture of lightning, driving rain and a howling wind field that hammers into Hernard's magical barrier with devastating force. Sanchez and Duke Vito are physically shoved back by the pressure. The barrier begins to strain. Duke Vito arrives at a grim conclusion. Under this level of continuous magical bombardment, the fortress will eventually fall. It is only a matter of time. Sensing the defense beginning to buckle, the Imperial Vanguard commander signals his advance. Count Gomez personally orders the ground troops forward. Siege ladders crash onto the fortress walls. The swarm reaches the gates. Duke Vito screams at his men to hold the line because they have no other choice. If Hernard falls, the rebellion ends here. The future they're fighting for dies with it. The scene cuts away from the chaos of Hernard, far away to where the real gambit is unfolding. 6 days into the diversionary operation, Roman Dmitri's forces have arrived at the fortress of Santino. Roman doesn't bring out a siege engine. He doesn't form his troops into attack formations. He simply walks up to the base of the fortress wall alone, states his name clearly, and issues a direct challenge to the Lord of Santino, a one-on-one duel. High on the battlements, Count Santino's face goes pale. The rumors about this man are not rumors. Even among the elite warriors of Valhalla, Roman Dmitri is known as the man who killed Barbossa single-handedly. Santino knows, with absolute certainty, that stepping outside those gates to face Roman in a fair fight would mean his death. He refuses. He shouts down that Roman's intentions are obvious, a quick psychological trick to end the siege early, and that he won't fall for it. He's buying time. He's hoping Roman goes away. Roman doesn't go away. He mocks the Count openly. He calls out the entire empire, asking out loud what has happened to Valhalla's famous pride as a nation of warriors who never back down from a challenge. Then he raises the stakes. He offers to fight Santino and all of his elite guards at the same time, and promises he won't take a single step back from where he's standing. It's a masterclass in psychological pressure, and it works, but not in the way Roman needs. Santino still refuses to open the gates. Roman pauses for a moment, then simply decides to go up himself. He reaches into his cloak, produces a magical scroll, and activates a flight spell. Wings of pure, glowing energy burst from his back, and he launches into the stormy sky, heading straight for the top of the fortress wall. Santino erupts in panic. He orders every archer to fire. A thick storm of arrows fills the air above Roman, but a golden-haired mage at the base of the wall raises her hand and conjures a fire shield that burns through the entire volley before it reaches him. Roman clears the wall and lands. The impact is not subtle. The stone battlements shatter beneath him in an explosion of blue magical energy. When the dust settles, the area around him is wrecked. Cratered stone, and the elite guards who were stationed there already defeated. Before Santino can process what just happened, a gloved hand shoots out of the clearing smoke and closes around his face. Roman lifts the Count off his feet with one arm, fixes him with a cold stare, and gives a single order to the surviving soldiers watching in stunned silence. Contact the imperial family and tell the Emperor that Count Santino is in danger. Somewhere deep in a quiet imperial office, a communication crystal begins to glow. Marquis Belelfa, a senior Valhalla official, picks it up calmly and listens as Santino's voice comes through, trembling, barely coherent, describing what has just happened. The mighty fortress has been breached. Roman Dmitri is standing right in front of him. They need reinforcements immediately. There is a long silence on the other end. When Marquis speaks, his tone is not shock. It is not alarm. It is cold, deliberate, and completely unmoved. He tells Santino that imperial reinforcements will only be dispatched after the rebellion at Hernard has been fully crushed. Santino breaks. He begs, he pleads, he demands to know how he's supposed to stop someone like Roman Dmitri on his own. His desperation bleeds through the crystal, raw and humiliating. The Marquis cuts him off, warning him not to test his patience. And then Santino's voice goes silent. A single, brutal strike ends the transmission. Roman Dmitri has ended the Count's life without hesitation. Through the glowing crystal, Marquis delivers his final verdict in a voice that carries no guilt whatsoever. Santino's death, he says, is a necessary sacrifice for the greater good of Valhalla. The Empire did not abandon him. They offered him up deliberately, and Roman Dmitri simply accepted. 2 fronts, 2 stories, 1 strategy. At Hernard, the rebels are fighting to survive against impossible odds, buying time with everything they have. And at Santino, Roman Dmitri has just demonstrated exactly why the Emperor was so desperate to finish the war before he arrived. The next chapter promises to push both of these battles further. Whether Duke Vito's lines hold and what Roman does next now that Santino is taken, that's where this story goes. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time.